All right. Thank you, Madeline, and for allowing us this lovely space. Um, for those of you who have just joined, we have a long-term association with ITAC, and it's almost like a family to us. And I'm sure that's the experience everyone has, whoever becomes a part of the ITAC family. You just become, and a part of the ITAC family forever. So there is a little context to this work uh, that I want to set, and then I will quickly introduce my co-facilitators today. In 2021, ITAC opened a very interesting opportunity for teaching artists. It started a global innovator program, and I was a fortunate one to have received the global innovators. Like I was one of the 5 or 6 innovators who were chosen, and what I really wanted to do was a part of an ongoing work that the Design Led Innovation Collective that Probal and I co-founded and Srushti is a part of. Um, we have been working on the ideas of futures thinking and foresight for many years now. And we can't say that we are experts on it. I don't think there is anybody who's an expert on futures. Philosophically speaking, we can only aspire to explore it and try to make sense of it. And what we wanted to do as a part of the Innovators program was to bring in the idea of futures thinking, futures consciousness in the context of teaching artists and socially engaged artists, and people who work with communities and different contexts. And 2021, as you can understand, was a very, very interesting time. We were still in the middle of the pandemic, and yet, like many rounds of many waves of the pandemic happened. So we did a lot of interesting work through that. And in 2022 in Oslo, part of that work we kind of shared in the form of a workshop and got very interesting feedback, a lot of new insights generated. And we continued with that work. So much so that we never really found an opportune moment to sort of say, okay, this is where the work is done and let's just share. Because every time we come to that point, we sort of feel that, oh, there's so much more and we want to share that as well. So we are in that process in the next couple of months to actually make some of our work available for the ETAC community for free, so that hopefully it might help them in however little it is in their ways of exploring futures in their work. So that's the larger context. Uh, we wanted to have the think tank for 90 minutes instead of maybe 60 minutes because we realized that if we do it for 60 minutes, it's too short a period of time to engage in meaningful conversations, especially because something with respect to futures, we all think we know and we have experienced that ourselves. But the more you delve deeper into it, the more you realize how little we really understand. It's so complex in so many ways. And in the middle of that, we are constantly bombarded with mega trends and different kinds of trend reports and different kinds of foresight and predictions and etc. And then how do we sort of make sense of it? It's rather overwhelming, and the world is constantly changing, as we all know. So what we are planning to do today in the think tank is part of the toolkit that we uh, plan to share eventually. We are planning to use parts of it because it's absolutely not possible to share all of it and engage, because the whole point of the toolkit that we are planning to share is something which hopefully will develop futures thinking in teaching artists over a period of time. It is not something that you just sort of engage in for 60 to 90 minutes and then you sort of go ahead. So we hope that through the conversations that we engage in today with all of you, and thanks for joining, we will be able to also deepen and widen our conversations and some of our insights through the process. So we are representing a global design-led innovation collective, D.epicentre. I'm Sudebi. I wear multiple hats. I'm a transdisciplinary designer. But one of the things that I do across different contexts is that I always enjoy bringing in multiple media and forms and material to design impact with other people. And for me, thinking about fair regenerative possibilities and working towards it and making intangible ideas actionable is something very important. And Probal, off to you quickly to introduce yourself.
Hi, so between Sudebi and I, we are the ones who founded D.epicentre. I come from a very different background, but for the last 10 odd years, a little more, I've delved into the world of design primarily through Sudebi. And we work across the world and lovely people such as yourselves. Thank you. Srushti,
And
maybe.
Srushti.
Hi, I'm Srushti. I'm a design and research fellow at D.epicentre, and it's lovely to meet all of you today.
She was rather brief about herself. She used to be my student at my university. So I wear another hat. I have been teaching at one of India's premier design schools called Srushti Manipal Institute of Art Design and Technology. She used to be a student of creative education. And one of her areas of interest is to use games as a way to communicate and to engage. So that's one of the resonance that we have, because at D.epicentre, very often we engage in playful ways of connecting with people, community, and the planet. So we don't want to spend too much time now in introducing ourselves and everything. We'll jump into the context. Before we get started, just wanted to check a couple of things with all of you. One is that we will be using Miro as a way to engage with certain things. Is it okay for all of you to use Miro? It's absolutely fine if someone here has never used Miro, which is completely understandable.
What is it, Sudebi?
Miro is a platform. It's an online whiteboarding tool. We will share the link. You just have to click on it and use that for the activities that we will be engaging in. Okay. So Srushti, if I may request you to paste the Miro link. And we will be sharing our screen, so not a problem. If anyone finds anything difficult, please let us know. We can also do, be your scribe and add. So hopefully it'll be easy for you to engage. Give me a second. I will share my screen so you kind of see how Miro works. But if you can all just click on the link Srushti had shared in the chat and see if you can access it, or anyone is finding it difficult to access it. I think all of you can get to the Miro board. Yeah. So you can come out of the Miro board for now, because we are going to have conversations and I'm sharing my screen. So at this moment, you may not need it. Off to Probal. Probal, do you want to quickly share how we are going to do a quick round of introduction?
Yes, I just also wanted to tell everyone that it'll probably help if you're on a laptop. Of course, you can use Miro on a tab as well, but ideally it works best if you have a mouse because there's a bit of push, pull, etc. that you need to engage in, primarily with the post-its, digital post-its, which are used on Miro. That said, we have looked at some data with respect to futures through which we are going to introduce you to this entire concept of futures and how it affects you, etc. So there's a report that we looked at. I'm just trying to open that page. Just 1 second. Yes. So it's the World Future Studies Federation. They published a report. They publish a report each year. The one that we've looked at is called the Special Holiday Review, and it looks at human futures. Special Holiday Review, Human Futures 2024, and it looks at the trends which would mostly be important for all of us in 2025. And what we would want you to do is to have a look at the Miro board and look at the leftmost column. We have used the trends which this report mentions as different different topics. And if we can have a look at that and kind of uh, read just the introduction to that entire thing and try and tell us if uh, which of these really matter to you as a teaching artist or in your lives. So you could see there are quite a few of them: political, geographical, technology, education slash society, and uh, climate.
I think just to like just 1 second, if I may interrupt, Probal. I
Yeah.
have my screen out here. For this part, for the introduction, you do not need to go on Miro, and someone might be dragging something. Srushti, would you please lock it? Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just trying to paraphrase what Probal said. We are doing a very quick round of introduction for in about 10 minutes. Each one of you can take like maybe 15 seconds, look into the 5 trends that this report is talking about. You can choose one of the most important trends which you think, and there's nothing right and wrong about it, which of these trends really matter to you, in 2025, and why so? And that way, we can understand a little about who you are. All right. So to just give a very, very quick example, that someone might say that I am somebody who works a lot in Southeast of Asia, and my form of engagement with people might be mural as an art form, and I do a lot of work in placemaking. And I feel the fact that global South or the majority nations are rising, the majority world is rising, that is going to really deeply impact the way in which I work. So it's basically like that, and you tell your name so that we kind of know who you are. All right. So I think you can directly have a look at my screen, and I can zoom in a little more. But if you want to read it better, you can obviously go on Miro. 2 minutes for you to quickly go through these 5 over here, and then quickly tell us. Everyone will get about 15 seconds to give your introduction using the trend.
And Sudebi, when I go to Miro, I don't see anything. I don't have the screen. I must have gotten off somehow.
Okay, so what might happen is when you go on Miro, are you seeing something like this complete emptiness? Like
And
this?
mine is all black. Yes.
Yes. I think you need to just zoom out. If you use on the bottom right, and I'm therefore showing you on my screen what I'm doing. Yeah, if you just zoom in a bit and then move the cursor little left or right, then you will be
Okay.
able to see
I will
what
see
you are
what I
seeing
can
on my
find.
screen. Yeah. Sometimes Miro takes us to a blank part of the Miro. It's there. You just need to zoom out to be able to locate where we are. So this is, and that's the reason I'm sorry for moving my cursor around. It's just to give you a sense how the Miro works. The trends that we are talking about right now is right here. So I think even if you can't access the Miro, we can just get to that in about 10-15 minutes from now. If it still persists, we'll try to help you out. But for now, just look at this part, which are 5 trends, which this report, as Probal was talking about, is talking about the primary forces or primary trends which are going to shape 2025. You can hopefully see it on my screen.
And Sudebi, where did you want us to put our names?
Sorry, Madeline. You can choose sticky note from here, and you can just say that this one, and you can just say Madeline over there. But if you are struggling to use, not saying you, but anyone who's struggling, you can tell us. We will primarily have a conversation about this. We would like to understand the why.
It's a drag and drop, Madeline, and if you look towards the left of your screen, you'll see an arrow icon. If you click on that, it turns into a hand. Once you have the hand, you can use that hand to drag and drop to anywhere on the Miro board. That's how it works. It's a little bit of getting used to. Sorry.
And again, I'm repeating, if anyone is finding it difficult, just let us know. We can totally do it for you.
Yeah, Sudebi, I'm still not seeing it. I have it zoomed back to 10%, and I'm seeing the different scenarios across the top, the political,
Okay.
geographical, education.
If you can see that, all you need to do is maybe zoom out further. Like if you look at my screen, I'm at 1%. And on the left of it, you will be able to see. So if you look at my screen, you
Okay.
are possibly seeing these ones.
Yes.
You can see I'm still at 6% and
Yep.
it's so large. Yeah, so if you just zoom out further,
Okay.
then
And go
on
to
the left of it, yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Again, as I'm saying that for this activity, it's okay if you don't use the Miro because we will quickly now get into a conversation. So what I suggest we do as people are still adding the sticky notes, some of you have already done that. Maybe what I can do is I can leave the screen open so you can see it and think about it. But whoever is ready, maybe we can quickly start sharing. I would request you to not get into a long conversation because all the other activities that we plan to do in the think tank will allow us to know a lot about your work and your context and how futures impact it. So if you can just talk about which of these trends of impact your work and why so and who you are, that'll be great. So anyone can start.
Hey, I'm Erica. I'll jump in and lubricate the conversation. I put my sticky next to narrative foresight in policymaking, and although I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the example there, it caught my eye because I'm particularly interested in artists as civic engagers. And at this moment in America, I am particularly disheartened by some narrative storytelling. So that is why my sticky was there.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing that. And just to give you a little bit of information that the toolkit that we will make available through the ITAC website, we are not only going to give tools and certain methodologies to sort of practice futures thinking, we do plan to put in a lot of resources because some people like to engage a lot into readings, so we are going to also add in a lot of resources so that many people across the globe can understand a lot of different things which are happening around the world, which none of us know. And it's like so much is happening. It's so difficult to sometimes keep track of it. So yes, absolutely. We'll make these available. But thank you so much for sharing this. Since we are already on the narrative foresight and policy making, and I see Jan, do you want to share? Is Jan here? Okay, so
I
we
can't
just move.
see her on the call.
Okay, okay. We'll move. And anyone else who wants to share about which of these trends influence your work? We would really like to hear from all of you, so that we get a good sense of who the group is today.
Well, I would echo what Erica said because I work as a storyteller and I work in drama. And even though I don't necessarily work at that level that is listed in the trend, it's certainly an interest of mine. How training young people to think in terms of story and narrative and how that will affect their lives later on.
Thank you so much. In which context do you work?
I mostly work in schools doing arts integration work with students and
Right.
teachers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I don't
Anyone
mind.
else who?
I don't
Yes,
mind
please.
chipping in. I put my name next to Global South Majority Nations Rising. So my name's Madeline. I'm the director of ITAC. And so working in an international context, anytime, especially if your job is to be representative of an international group, anytime there are shifts or changes in how geographies, regions like to put forth their ideas or shift how they relate or be represented in any specific way, any big shifts in that regard, just will always have an influence on how we operate, on the things we advocate for, and on how we position and host things in an international space. So I would say that was a big one for me.
Thank you, Madeline. Someone who wants to share? Someone here has added a tick over here, and I don't know who has done that.
Hi, Sudebi. It's Jeff. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you? Yes,
Good.
absolutely.
I don't seem to be able to liberate my sticky note from the stack to put it where it's supposed to go. It doesn't. When I move it, it moves the entire screen. It doesn't move the sticky note. But anyway, I did put the check mark on the item relating to AI and future work. As a design coach of students in all kinds of grade levels and subject areas, and not just art and design, but when students are, falling back on the quick and easy solution of asking AI tools to design for them and then asking for ownership, requesting that now I own that because I came up with the prompts. So that's my work. And so we have to, know how to contend with that in terms of ownership of work.
Thank you so much. And so good to see you, Jeff.
You too, Sheena.
So anyone else who wants to introduce yourself through the trend? Okay, I think we'll move forward. If anyone wants to share, we can always come back. We'll move to the next part. You will all know we have quite a few people right now from the US, and you know that we are entering into a slightly controversial territory. What we are going to be doing, and I'm sure this is a safe space, and all the teaching artists that I know of in the ITAC network, they have certain resonance with in terms of values, right? We all know that. I think one thing which is common across any teaching artist is that you cannot talk about any work in a very impersonal way. You have to talk about the individual and the groups that we work with. We can't just say that everyone is just the same. We cannot talk about homogenization. So I'll give a little introduction to the next activity and why it's going to have a very important relationship with the next part of the activity. Is that, when we do a lot of futures and foresight work, right now there are a lot of different guides available, toolkits available, trainings available. One of the areas, there are quite a few difficulties many different people face, but in our experience, we have seen across the world, is that people find it very hard to really think about the future. And the futures-based methodologies, how it sort of differs from traditional trend-based ways of predicting the future is that typical trend-based ways of looking at the future uh, talks a lot about what they have seen as a pattern in the past. Then there are scholars and experts who come up with trend reports. And then with respect to what has happened in the past, there is a prediction which happens, and primarily it's very unidirectional. Like it's an extension of what has happened in the past into the future. Whereas where futures thinking methodologies differ in a very simple way is that it all the time not only thinks about one kind of future, it always thinks about future as plural. There are always multiple future possibilities which are there under any given circumstances. So which means that in a certain context, under certain circumstances, there would always be multiple future scenarios within which we need to think about things. Now, doing something like that sometimes become very academic or scholarly. Sometimes it's very overwhelming with respect to information and all. And sometimes it becomes full of assumptions. One way in which we have seen this works out really well is when people think about a particular character or a particular group of people and then think about them wearing their, stepping into their shoes, because it always helps in bringing that kind of a connection with all of these different scenarios. Why we are talking about this is we are going to have about 10 minutes for those of you who are here. And I will just share many different ways in which we are in our toolkit. We are going to help people in creating their characters, but for the sake of little time that we have for the think tank, we are using a process that we find absolutely like quite useful for most people that we have worked with. And I'm sure many of you know this. This is Sylvia Duckworth's Wheel of Power and Privilege. What we want you all to do at the moment is that each one of you, can you think about one character, and I'm using the word character because rather than a person, and this character could be a particular person that you might think about. That's absolutely fine, because we are going to enter into a zone of storytelling from now on. All right. So I'm just giving Jeff's example because I know Jeff, and also incidentally, Jeff was also one of the innovators in our 2021 cohort, and we had great time in Oslo all together. So for example, Jeff's example that he quoted about why AI is going to be an important factor to consider in his context. So if Jeff has to think about a particular character, the character could be from, say, one of the universities or spaces that he engages in. This allows you to think a little bit about the positionality of the character. So if you can think about where in this wheel, for every part of it, does your character can be situated, I think that will be great. This is useful because if we just talk about one or two aspects, we are not going to understand the layers of, identities that all of us hold within ourselves. We all know that how they intersect with each other. So it's absolutely also possible, because this has been developed in a certain context, and in every different geographical and cultural and political context, this wheel looks quite different. Like we have worked on, say, a wheel of Indian power and privilege, or an Indonesian power and privilege, or German power and privilege. All that varies, of course, as we understand. But this is kind of universal to some degree. If there are certain aspects of this which doesn't hold in your character's context, that's okay. You can not use it. Likewise, if you feel that there is a very important aspect which is extremely important in the context in which you work, and that is not featured here, feel free to add. So I'll just give a very like often understood or often stated example from India. If I have to look at this in an Indian context, I don't think we can talk about creating a character and mention different aspects from this wheel and not bring in the caste. We personally may not exercise caste-based, practices, but the fact is structurally caste is a very important thing in India. So we can't deny that. We can be in denial, but that plays a role in whatever happens. All right. So we might say that I want to add another pie into this pizza, and I want to bring in that dimension. So essentially, uh, in brief, you have to select different aspects from this wheel for as many categories as you can, uh, and create a character. And this is not a hypothetical character. We want you to create a character who represents the kind of people that you typically work with as a teaching artist or whoever else you are. If you can do that, that will be great. You have 10 minutes to do that. And if you are finding it difficult to either access it or to use a sticky note, do tell us. What we eventually want you to do is, if you can go into this part, which is the character part, and each one of you, so Madeline can choose a sticky note and quickly write down the main points that characterizes her character. Likewise, Barry can do another sticky note with Barry's one character. All right, so we have about 10 minutes to design these characters, but who are rooted in your real life context and not really mythical characters. So I'll stop sharing. Or maybe if it helps you, I'll just keep this for you to think through. Anyone who has a problem with respect to accessing it, you can write it on the Miro on the Zoom chat, and we will add the sticky note. Srushti, if I may ask you to help us put a post-it for
Yeah, I'm just going to do that.
you. Srushti, one more little help. Can you see Barry's post-it? It's visible, right? 'Cause I just logged out of that. Okay, that's fine. All right, just trying to understand those who are here. Are you all done with your character creation? I'm just checking because this is key to enter into the future scenarios. If you all are done, we will share about these characters only at the end. Okay. So I'll again share my screen and tell you what we will be doing. So now is going to be hopefully an interesting thing. So here what we have done is that from diverse sources in the last probably 4 to 5 years, we have gathered different kinds of future scenarios which are not randomly created at all. It's not about someone just imagining something just based on random speculation. They're all they all have emerged through deep research and a lot of foresight related activities. And from all of these diverse sources, we had created uh, different sets of cards which are going to be part of our futures toolkit. And what we have done for this particular think tank is we have created different categories. So some of the scenario sets are more political, some of them are more kind of geographical, some of them here are more technological, includes AI, of course. Some of them are sort of connected to society, education, etc. Some of them are more connected to climate. I mean, it's a given that all of these larger ideas also intersect with each other. It's hard to put them into narrow categories, but to make it easy, we have just done this kind of clubbing. What we have also done is we will give you 5 minutes. Hopefully, it'll be easy for you. If you sort of don't go into the cards, so when I'm saying cards, if you see my screen, these things are the scenarios. You don't need to feel overwhelmed and say, okay, so many cards are here. Like all of these colorful things are the cards, and each set has multiple cards. As I told you, that this one particular scenario under political has 5 cards. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, like that. You don't need to read the cards at the moment at all. All you're doing is you're taking a decision by reading the description, a one-line description, which precedes each set of scenario-based cards. And once you read, you might say that, oh, I feel that the context in which I work, this can be relevant for me, or this might be important for me. Okay. And we have tried our best to be as diverse as we could. So there are contexts from Singapore to South Africa, contexts from Africa to Europe, contexts from Asia to the US. So if you just read this little bit, one line, you will be able to understand what the set is about. And once you select that you, one person, one of you might just say that, okay, I feel this set works as a beginning for my context. Okay. So what you then do is you select that, then you only read the cards which belong to that set. Okay. So like if you choose this living intelligence as the next big thing, you're only going to read the era of living intelligence, the everything engine needs your data, and artificial intelligence meets organoid intelligence. All right. Just read these scenarios. What you need to then do is the character that you have chosen, and I'm just giving a random example that maybe you have a character called Srushti. I'm just giving Srushti's example, and which like symbolizes a person like Srushti in her context. You need to think that if this is a character or a person that you work with as a TA, in each one of these different scenarios that might happen in future, how might your work with Srishti differ based on the scenario? Okay, like if you read them, you'll very clearly understand that forget about the character, even you or us, we will not be behaving the same way. We behave differently in different contexts under different circumstances. So it's only normal, it's only obvious that every person or community that we work with, they might also respond to different kinds of scenarios differently. And of course, it's your speculation based on your understanding of the communities that you work with or your understanding of the character. So just again repeating myself that you already have designed a character based on your experience. You are going to this part of the Miro board. And again, if you have any difficulty, we are happy to share screen and show you. Read only the of the set of cards. And then you decide which scenario you want to play with for the think tank. And you have to think about your character and situate the character and how your work with this character and this character's behavior will change under these different kinds of scenarios. What you do not do, I think it's obvious, but I'm just trying to explain. You cannot choose one set of scenario and then another one and then look at all the cards. Or you can't just sort of choose two different scenarios and say, I want this card from this scenario set and I want this card from this scenario set, because then there is no basis of those scenario creations, right? So you have to choose one way of looking into those scenarios and then map your character's journey into those scenarios and also think about what you might be doing differently with them. And again, there's nothing right and wrong about it. It's just a playful way to sort of engage in thinking about different possible future scenarios, depending on the context that you choose. And again, a disclaimer that all of these scenarios are not designed by us. They are all done through thorough research by like global experts, and we have curated them. Of course, they were not available in this form. We have designed the cards to make it accessible to sort of say, okay, these could be scenario based cards. Okay. What we will do is we would say that perhaps for this entire activity, for you to choose and then for you to situate your character under one set of scenario based cards, let's take 20 minutes for it. And after that, we want to open it up for a nice conversation amongst all of us. We would like to hear about what your character is about. That will reveal the kind of people that you work with. We would also like to understand, how do you think, how might these scenarios affect the way in which you work? What do you think your character or the communities you work with will behave differently? How will your work change or not? We are going to open it up for conversations. It's okay if you don't want to write much on sticky notes. It's just important that you make a mental note and you come here and have a conversation. That's most important. So don't get very bothered about how many words you have written on a sticky note. It's more important that we have this conversation. So 20 minutes from now, we will put a reminder on the Miro itself, so we remember when to come back and start the conversation. And any confusion you have, just ask us.
Maybe Elise is finding it difficult to access Miro. She's written on the Zoom chat. If we can have
Okay, I have a suggestion. Maybe with Madeline's help, we can do it. Madeline, can we create a breakout room? And maybe one of us can go into the breakout room, like either Probal, me, or Srushti, and maybe take Ellis or anyone else who might find it difficult. So it can just be a one-on-one thing and Ellis can read it through our stream. That might be useful. Thank you. Elise, is that okay?
It's fine. I can only stay 10 more minutes, but thank you, Madeline.
Okay, Elise should have been allocated to a room with Srushti. So hopefully you are both able to join that now. If you're not, let me know. Great, that's them in there. I'm going to pause the recording too, and I'll begin that again when we come back.
Yes, yes. So we have about 25 minutes before, we end. So maybe 20 minutes we can spend in having a good conversation. I know we don't have too many people here, which in a way is good, that it allows for deeper conversation with whoever is there. And I think Srushti wrote, you mentioned that you had a very deep conversation with Elise. So you can also represent Elise's perspectives, right? So that'll be great. So I think I'm not sharing the screen so that we can see each other and have a great conversation. Any one of you, if you want to start, what I would want from you is, because we don't know who your character is, and this is a great way to introduce yourself again. If you can talk about who your character is and why is that person your character, which also tells us the nature of your work and the kind of community that you engage with, and which set of scenarios did you choose and why? Because we would be curious to know. And under that set, all the different possible scenarios which are there, how did your character respond to each? So, how did you play with those possibilities? So anyone here who wants to start?
I'll jump in.
Yes, great.
I'm ready to go. Okay, so my character, I'll actually, I thought, sorry, I've got two screens. So when I look to the side, I'm not ignoring everyone. I'm looking at all my stuff. I work with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated folks. The people I serve are a variety of humans, but most of my folks are heterosexually identifying men. And I'm like putting this because of that scope of privilege. I tried to add all the details. So, I tried, so I've got heterosexually identifying male, large muscular build, brown skin, and Mexican descent. As you can see, you don't need to read that to you. I was imagining someone who has been incarcerated for decades, often since youth. There are a lot of, because of changing laws, there are a lot of people with various life sentences in California who were committed as adults, though they committed a crime as a juvenile, and they've been moved either off life without parole, which means basically a death sentence inside, they're never getting out, to life with the possibility of parole, or finally being eligible for that parole hearing, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, I don't mean to bog down. But there are a number of these individuals who are earning their right to rejoin society at the moment, and after having thought they would never get out. And so this is an individual who is marginalized in all of these ways, in addition with incarceration history, a felony history, and is living in transitional housing. But I'm imagining this character has done everything that I know from these individuals to succeed at the parole board, which means they have worked harder than any new ager you can imagine to change who they are. They have really rigorously worked on themselves. They've gotten education. They've done every sort of self-help. They are in and they've been a leader of their community inside, in terms of helping others transform and change their criminal mindset. So there are individuals coming out with like just extremely positive frames of mind and a sense of empowerment and as much skill as one can have in that environment, and coming out into this world that just thinks they're crap, and where they're not up to the pace and they don't have the pace with technology. And they're still living sober, and they're just doing everything they can to stay positive. Okay, so that's my character. And I chose, gosh, I'm zoomed in at the moment, so I can tell you, I chose something called testosterone fury, but it is in education society. I chose education society. I was just society. This was kind of what I was excited about. I thought I'd probably find something in there for me.
Yeah, I'm
Work.
just showing what you have done.
Oh, you've
So
got
just
it.
for
Great.
others. Yes, I've got
And
it.
then
So you,
I was, what can I say? I thought it would be an easy way to go by finding some trends that were USA specific. I just thought that was a good way to hone down. And then so much of this was applicable, but I was fascinated by this idea of testosterone fury because I hadn't really thought with that lens before, especially not in terms of the people I work with. I may have thought about it in terms of myself, my personal relationships. I think about a lot of male teaching artists that I supervise, and I definitely do think about the dynamics between the sexes in society a lot. But I thought it would be fun to the question to why did you choose this? I thought it'd be fun to think of this character through this lens. And I didn't come up with much, but I just was imagining this character with all that sort of positive thinking that you're thinking that I had already described, and coming from, such a practically a male only environment for so long, and in addition from like not, maybe he hasn't been in outside since 1986, and to kind of feel also that pressure of being male. I was imagining that he would find himself navigating his ways into like online groups that may not actually have his best interests at heart because of resonance with that possible messaging. And that's what I thought was kind of interesting, because I've also been thinking there have been a few of my clients, my participants inside partial spaces that were very excited about the last election. And I found that really strange because I try to not make it a political space, so I actually didn't really engage folks when they said that. But I was thinking, wow, you are exactly the kind of human being the person you're excited is going to be in charge of this country wants to chuck out ASAP, if not yesterday, like all the categories. So I found that really interesting. And I think the way things have been moving so fast in this country, there's already a shift in like, oh, I thought I was saying yes to something. I didn't realize all this other stuff. But we don't really engage politically in our conversations, so I don't really know, and that's okay. But anyway, that's what I chose, and that's the lens. And I'm not sure if I did the exercise correctly, but I had fun thinking through it, and I really had enjoyed reading all those scenarios. It got me. It got me in a very thoughtful place.
Thank you, Erica, for the detailed interpretation of the scenario and situating your character within that. Uh, and I think yours is a classic example of what we were talking about, that this is not a process. If you want to really engage in futures thinking, it can't be done fast. It needs its own time, which is why our toolkit is going to be something which people can engage with over a period of time and not rush from one thing to another. Uh, Essentially, in this exercise, what one has to do is that, like you chose one scenario and you spent a lot of time with your character in that scenario, you need to eventually choose all the sets in that one set. So if there were 7 cards, you have to think about the same character under each circumstances and then think how it works, because then it allows us to really stretch your muscles, your brain muscles, to sort of think about, okay, how I am going to work with them differently if this is what happens. But you have done one of those really like in depth, and your enthusiasm is very contagious. So thank you so much for sharing that. So anyone who wants to go next? Barry, Madeline? Yeah, Barry, yeah.
Madeline, you want to go? Well, I will. Let me see if I can get to it now. Find out where I was. Oh,
We can also share your screen if that helps you. If you tell
no,
us where, okay, yeah.
it was not too far from where I just keep trying to drag instead of locating myself on the screen. Ah, it's getting smaller.
You have found a new toy, Barry, today,
Yes.
which is Miro.
It is something. All right, so the character I created, oh no, got too big, is based on the type of teacher that I work with. I live in the southern part of the United States. Many of the schools I go to are primarily African American, or a lot of African American teachers. So I said I gave her the name Latanya, which would not be an unusual name. That she is larger framed, larger bodied, because many of the people I work with are dark skinned, English speaking. She does own property, probably married, a citizen with a post secondary education, as she went for teacher training and college. I have some disability because I feel like a lot of the people I work with are not necessarily, diagnosed as disabled, but just have a harder time moving around or getting up. Heterosexual, neurotypical, mostly mentally healthy, but probably deals with stress and anxiety of being a woman and a larger person and a darker skinned person, and that she's a cis woman in middle class. And then I looked at the scenario below the one that Erica was looking at, and so it was also in education, and it was scenarios. Let me see if I can get to it. I think I have it covered up. Oh no, I don't. I'm sorry. It's scenarios with possible 4 scenarios for 21st century schooling, and it had to do a lot with these scenarios have to do a lot with how schools are structured, with diversity of supply, with different types of schools in different jurisdictions providing different types of services. It also they also talked a lot about the types of services that schools provide. And I'm not going to remember them all, but cognition, social and emotional, basically custodial services. And one of the scenarios talked about kind of breaking those off, and that schools maybe become a place that really just focus on the imparting of knowledge, or even the assessing of knowledge, and that students get that knowledge elsewhere, and that the school becomes kind of a nexus point, and that students are not necessarily coming to a school, that a school doesn't exist like that. And so I put in terms of the character that she sees both possibility and peril in these scenarios. And I'm just going to read what I wrote because my brain doesn't think beyond that. This is a whole lot to take in. She welcomes the supply diversity, as it will allow her to shift as her personal and familial needs shift over time. And I think about her in terms of having children, that there might be shifts in her personal relationships, maybe marriage ends, parents have needs, as her parents get older. And so I see this in the people that I work with all the time. Relatives have needs, that, so she has to take in a niece or a nephew, and so she can't go to school or be in school 5 days a week because she has to get her children to daycare, and she has to take her, go to help her mother at the senior home, and so on. And so the diversity of supply kind of helps that she might position herself. And some of these I see happening already. that she can position herself a little bit more online, a little bit more late at night if necessary, a little bit more as a consultant, but that she might also get lost in the range of options. And the constant need for redefinition, that she has to not only respond to the changing needs of her family, but then how does she redefine herself in the educational ecosystem? And how does she constantly find where's the best position for her? And especially as that relates to ongoing technology, that as she gets older, technology gets harder, technology goes faster, and also physical spaces that, as she gets older, also her physical abilities and her patience with physical movement, not wanting to have to run around all the place and not wanting to have to get up, and deal with kids in the same way. So that's, kind of, I feel like it's a little bit broad strokes and kind of pastel colors, but, a little fuzzy, but that's how I see her engaging with some of these scenarios.
So absolutely beautiful, because I think, as we all know, that there is always going to be some amount of fuzziness and ambiguity. You can't talk about something with that level of specificity, because then it almost sounds like then we are trying to control it, right? So I think the whole idea is to constantly be in these multiple spaces with multiple possibilities, to have the humility to understand that things might change, things will change. And maybe in future, these scenarios may not even exist. Some other things might come up, But I think one of the things which teaching artists do is they use creativity to engage with whatever happens in their lives. So I think that's beautiful, again, like how you responded to this. So thank you so much, Barry.
Thank you.
And Madeline?
Yes, so I'll do what Erica did and just pop my characteristics of the person I'm imagining in the chat. So I imagined a teaching artist who is stepping into teaching artistry. So someone who has an artistic practice, who has done some work in community, like led a youth theatre or something, but generally when I'm out and about or speaking and I meet a teaching artist, if they're at the beginning of their career, they want to understand what kind of work can I be doing, what kind of resources can I do this, or can I use this is the kind of topic I'm interested in, how might that look, who's already doing stuff, and I tend to help with that process a bit. And so I was thinking about that person, but then when I looked at the contexts, I'm just very naturally drawn personally to some of them. And so I looked at the political, and I looked at the plausible geopolitical scenarios that CEOs should consider when setting strategy, because I think more than anything, those are the kinds of things, obviously, from my viewpoint, that impact a teaching artist's ability to practice, and in what setting and in what way. And I think as teaching artists, we kind of respond to the needs in front of us. And usually we lean towards niches, but generally if this part of the world is burning, we want to gravitate over here and see how we can help. And so as the context changes, the practice changes and how you access it changes. And so this one was really interesting, and I won't go through every single one because I made lots of notes and the way my brain works. But what struck me was the tipping point at which advocacy and the need to make change intersects with a personal risk. And then there's a choice about self-preservation and comfort, and a choice between doing the hard thing that maybe you can't sustain in a kind of a hopeless setting. And so when I looked at the shifting context, the first one is kind of similar to what's happening now, where there's a sort of abundance of need, funding's drying up in certain places, and it's sort of a now more than ever type mentality. Like teaching artists are at the front line. I mean, I'm on with American colleagues who I imagine feel this really strongly at the moment. And then there are other scenarios in which that gets worse or different, in which I imagine my colleagues in other parts of the world. And when they come and ask about teaching artistry, it's obviously a different answer, because there is a safety risk and a personal risk and all that kind of stuff. And so I found that really interesting, trying to imagine how this character, at what point do they give up and just do a different job? Because in this setting, they do have all kinds of privilege and that is a possibility for them. And so I think that was really interesting, like reality with how bad does it get before the urgency turns into like a bit of a retreat. And I think that was an interesting exercise.
Thank you, Madeline. Again, it's actually very interesting to see, and this is what we kind of speculate, that it's and maybe we can unpack it later, but you see that if the same sets of scenarios were given to you without adding that element of creating a character, you might do this entire thing very differently, because at that point in time you would remain Madeline and Erica and Barry and respond to those scenarios. Whereas the fact that you are thinking about a particular character and trying to step into into the shoes of that particular character, at least what happens is you are sort of aware that when you're making the choice, is it that Madeline is making the choice, or this character making the choice? And sometimes they might be similar, sometimes they might be different. But I feel like this kind of a tension between different characters in how they respond, I think is very interesting to see. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much. You made a lot of notes, as you mentioned. So it's good for us to also unpack. So last but not the least, I would request Srushti to represent Elise. And if you could briefly talk about what Elise shared.
Yeah, so Elise basically comes from a theater background. She has her own Shine at the Arts Consortium. She works with a lot of people of color, immigrants, and neurodivergent people with varying levels of disabilities. She works to create literary based opportunities and learning for people of the community that which she works with, which is kindergarten to adults. So a lot of our conversation revolved around the current political happenings in the United States of America, because several of the people that make up her community are currently being quite severely impacted by Trump's policies. And those that are maybe not able to comprehend their impacts, people with significant mental disabilities, are certainly being impacted by way of Medicare and Medicaid being cut down, but they aren't necessarily able to rationalize or fully conceptualize what it is that is happening in terms of an impact to their lives. She was also talking about several of the neurodiverse people that she works with. Several of them might not have quite the opportunity to graduate out of traditional schooling, because traditional schooling, right now being very test focused and very result driven, means that several of their creative or artistic tendencies that may better capture what it is that they have learned and may be a better way of representing that, can't really happen, because that's not the society that we really live in. We were also talking about how creative thinking and creative sort of economies and creative societies are being actively discouraged. So we were looking at various cards by the 2025 trends by Juan L. Isaza. I could be really butchering his name, and I really do apologize for that. And the 21st century schooling that Barry was talking about as well. So we were picking up several elements of that in our conversation. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we were talking about. And she was also sharing her perspective on how there is a significant generational change that she's able to see as an educator, and how the youngest generation that's currently coming through is being negatively impacted by the extraordinary amounts of stimulus that they're being provided by tech and AI. And she was connecting it to Jeff's point about how students are now claiming ownership over AI generated content because they gave the prompt. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's sort of our conversation.
Thank you so much, Srushti, for representing Elise. I am not asking Bhavya because Bhavya had written that there's some technical glitches she's experiencing. But I mean, we are nearly there. But to kind of wrap up, I first wanted to really thank all of you for engaging so deeply with something like this, because it's not easy to engage like the way in which you did, given the little time that we had. But I would love to hear very quickly, as I again told you that what we were doing in the think tank is just a teaser to a much bigger thing which is going to come out, and all of you will have access to that toolkit. But I would love to hear your thoughts about what your experience was like in this little teaser kind of an experience.
I would say it was somewhat intense because there was so much, so many facets of my character to think about, but also
Yes.
so much text to look at and fairly kind of high level text. Words
Yes.
I had to kind of I don't necessarily use in my day-to-day life. I'm not a fool. I'm pretty smart, but still processing that all in terms of thinking much larger. When I think about the future, I think about what I have to get done this afternoon and what I'm doing tomorrow, and so thinking about the macro world of education is a lot. But
But
it
thank you
was
so much.
challenging,
Sorry.
yeah, and good.
Yeah. Thank you, Barry, for that. If I may actually share each one, like each set that you all were engaging with, if you see the original piece of work from where we have extracted, most of them are between 30 to 100 page long.
Yeah.
And we have put it into that bite-sized piece, and that's why I was mentioning that we started the work, and we do a lot of futures related work, but when you create a toolkit, you also feel the responsibility that it should be usable by people even without us being present. And that's where we realize that having a range of different kinds of context in which, if we give the scenarios and if we can bring in a character based element of storytelling, and also ensure that people engage with it over a period of time, maybe it helps. Because I mean, if you speak to anybody who works seriously in futures and foresight, they will tell you that it's intense, it's challenging, it's very hard. So I mean, imagine even this much is so much, right? So that's where we have designed the cards. I mean, eventually, the way in which we will make it available is each set of cards will be given to you in printable formats. So you can just use a home-based printer and just print them out and cut them out, and you can use so that it becomes playful. So it becomes like this decks of cards with which you can play. But we did not know how else to make it even shorter without losing the complexity of it, because then it will become very frivolous. So that has been a challenge we have been encountering a lot. But thanks so much for again engaging. Yeah.
Another question, Sudebi, do you ever take this into kind of first-person reporting, first-person improvisation? I shouldn't speak for Erica because I barely know her, but I imagine she would have been comfortable. I would have been comfortable. I don't know about Madeline to say,
Yeah.
hi, my name is Latanya, and this whole world is driving me crazy because, or whatever.
I'm so glad that you said this, and it totally proves that you are a teaching artist, because actually the entire toolkit is written in the first person. So if you look at it, it'll feel like you are speaking to yourself. So yes, absolutely, it is 100% done in first person. Again, for the little time that we have in the think tank, we only showed you the glimpse. But yes, and I'm glad to hear this from you, because even without you seeing the toolkit, the fact that you said this is in any way validating our process, because we always feel that the moment you put something in first person, you instantly connect than keeping it very impersonal. So thank you so much for that. So I know we have run out of time, but I would love to hear from Erica and Madeline very quickly. Erica or Madeline, one of you, if you just share.
Okay, I mean, the idea of this futures thinking is 100% new to me. So it's interesting for me to just hear. I mean, you've already heard. I enjoyed the process. I didn't feel, because I personally didn't feel obligated to read every word. I understood we were on minimal time. I didn't feel bogged down by everything. I was like, well, I'll make a choice for now, and I kind of understand that kind of exercise, so I'm cool with that. Others might have had difficulty with that. Because I'm so new to futures thinking, I was living with, like, what is this for? so for Barry to say like, oh, futures thinking or teaching about futures thinking and putting it into first person narrative as one kind of context for me, I was really excited because one of the things that I am doing right now is I'm trying to work with a guy named Michael Rohd, ROHD, who's kind of one of America's like teaching artists, thought leaders in terms of and he is focusing this year on not so much working with teaching artists developing facilitation for devising projects, but in terms of civic engagements and civic conversations. His work has led that way for a while, but now he's just focusing that way. And that is on my heart, like who's going to lead these conversations. So I see a synchronicity between my interest and fear of that and what this is opening up for me. But I would be curious, and we've exchanged emails to like learn more about where you see this being used, and maybe it's more obvious if I knew about the world of futures thinking.
No, again, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. And I think the very reason why we sort of brought in the idea of futures thinking in the context of teaching artistry is that in our own work, we realize the need of not only bring in futures thinking, but actually bring in elements of future consciousness into all our work. A lot of us do this intuitively and instinctively without knowing about it. But if there is a way to systematically engage with something like this, it helps everybody. And what really fascinates us in the little that we understand about futures thinking work is, I feel that at the heart of it, it celebrates diversity because of these multiple possibilities. It celebrates at any given point in time, rather than getting into one corner of a binary, it always allows for multiplicity and plurality. And it does talk about a just, a fairer, and an equitable future for all. So because it's there at the heart of it, that's where we started feeling that it'll be immensely helpful, not only for policymakers and governments and interventionists or futurists to talk about futures thinking. We think bringing it as a daily vocabulary of a teaching artist might be extremely useful. And in little pockets, we have done that work. And we have seen how immensely powerful and transformational it has been for people who have engaged. So again, thanks so much for engaging and being open to something very new. So thanks. And Madeline, very quickly to hear from you.
Yes, I'll be very quick. I loved that exercise, and you've described this to me 10 times and I didn't fully ever understand what it was because I've never done this before, but I totally get it. I think this is kind of how my brain works, and I understand why the narrative part is so important, because one of the big things I like to think about a lot as I go to lots of conferences and hear great speakers is like, what do we need to do now to be ready for what comes next? And I think a tool like this, you can start to say, okay, if certain things are kind of cyclical, if the geopolitical stuff does go the way that it went last time when things were like this, what do we need to have in place to protect against the stuff that we can imagine is going to come? And I think that's a really helpful exercise, because so often you hear about a report on something that's already happened or an update on what we learned doing that thing, and we kind of miss, well, that's well and good, but coming down the track at us is this other big thing, and how do we need to pivot? And so I think this is a really helpful tool in asking you to think, who are you serving and what's going to happen for them and how do you need to show up? And I think that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And again, thanks for your perspective and always being very encouraging about whatever we do, Madeline. But honestly speaking, where we again felt the need of narrativizing this is, although a lot of typical and very powerful futures and foresight processes somewhere talk about narrative, but again, we have seen a lot of times the tools and frameworks which are typically used for it stay at the level of intellect for a lot of people. And you might engage in an intellectual discourse, and then you don't know how really do you see that happen in your real life. How do you make it actionable? Which is actually where we spend these many years to collect and curate and sort it out and sort of say, okay, this actually makes people relate to one of the context out of many. I mean, if you notice that all of you were in many ways diverse, but everyone found in this little time something for themselves. And we actually have many more, which would have just been overwhelming. So we didn't use it for today. But in the toolkit, we will definitely use them. So that narrativizing in a way allows one to connect to this in a realistic way, in an empathetic way, then again, have a very impersonal way to connect and just talk about them. That's the idea. So again, thank you so much, all of you. I am conscious of time. We have overshot it by 10 minutes. So my apologies. But it was very, very lovely to have all of you. And in a way, I'm glad that you were just a handful of people eventually, although we started with a larger number, because we could have this kind of an engaging conversation with all of you. If it'll be amazing if you could leave your email IDs with us, if it's okay for you. We would love to pick your brains in future, if possible.
Thank you, Sudebi, Probal, Srushti. Thank you for doing that. That was fabulous. And I'm excited to follow up with you and see what it becomes and, you know, help get it out there when it's ready. Thank you so much for doing it and for giving us that amount of time. That's super generous. So thank you for hosting. I'm going to end the call here if you've all put your stuff in the chat. And hopefully I'll see you next month for a think tank on arts and corrections led by some of our New Zealand colleagues. So thank you all, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Madeline. Take care, Barry. Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.